Welcome, night owls, to another rendition. We want to thank you for letting us come into your homes and into your living rooms tonight. And we have quite an amazing show planned for you. We are talking about Late Night with the Devil. Now, before we go on, I am one of your hosts. My first name is Richard Lale. Richard Lale is one name, not two. If I were Richard, I would be a that is right. I am known as the gentleman psychic. I'm a psychic and a medium. I used to be a psychic and a small, but I gained some weight. Unlike other psychics here in New Orleans who are all love and light or doom and gloom, I am a happy medium. And now, with that, we have our co hosts down over here in my lower right hand corner. We have the ever so lovely Heather Green. Heather Green, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hi, I am Heather Green, as Richard Lale has said, and I am the author of Lights, Camera, Witchcraft. Oh, always forget to bring it out, and here it is, just so you can see it. Beautiful cover. And it is a book about witchcraft in American film and television, definitive guide. And I am also a journalist for covering the occult and all things witchy, and as well as a editor at Llewellyn Worldwide, working with all kinds of witchy and occult authors. And I actually have a book coming out all about this topic of the devil, and I'm looking forward to talking about our show tonight.
And we have right above me, and now to my right, we have the ever so lovely Miss Courtney Buckley. Courtney Buckley, hello, welcome.
Hello, that's me, Courtney Buckley. I am Ghostbait on Scared and Alone, beloved member of my beloved Coven, and I finally am excited to talk about a movie that we are covering on Witches Movie Coven. It's been a while, folks. I know you won't believe it, but I have a lot of things to say, and they're not all negative. So let's.
Well, for those of you who do not know, we're actually watching The Witch Who Came from the Sea.
No! I'm having flashbacks to the surprise of that movie.
We are going to have to watch that movie at some point to get it out of our system.
We really must watch that film because really it comes up how many times and how many shows? So
Everyone.
almost every show since the moment. I don't even remember. That was almost a year ago, right?
Oh, easy.
I think it was at least a year ago, if not more, but that was the most traumatic night of my life. And if we ever do end up watching that movie for the show, I think we're going to have to just lay those trigger warnings on thick. That's all I'll say.
That is
We
true.
we will lay those on thick, just like actually tonight's film is a thick one. It's a good one. I mean, I shouldn't give too much away. We are watching Late Night with the Devil, which is a 2023 film. And this is where the illustrious Patty Negri, by the way, we should mention our lack of co-hosts, by the way. I feel like we are an incomplete coven. That is because Ms. Patty Negri is the busiest witch in Hollywood. She is, of course, out traversing the world and flying through the midnight air. And of course, Mr. Jason Menke, who we miss his golden locks. We miss his wit. We miss his charm. Jason Menke is a male witch, and he is off doing witchy, wonderful things. But I'm certain they might pop up through the magic of the internet in our conversation, in our chat, and if we're lucky, we may conjure them from beyond. Yeah. But I suppose this is where we should begin, because normally when we have the illustrious Patty Negri, she will say a little bit about herself, and then she'll ask me to give an unbiased synopsis of the film. And
Wait.
Yes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I have a question.
I have maybe an answer. I don't know. Maybe I have a crystal ball over there. Maybe we can ask that.
This is not the real Black Phillip.
That is not the real Black Phillip.
So that's not a question. That's a statement. This is the imposter Black Phillip with two L's, not one L. And someone present with us might know something about why I have the imposter and not the real one.
Oh, we're going to do the big reveal now? Okay. I do know something about the real Black Phillip. The real Black Phillip was given to me in Salem just about a week ago. to give him some surgery, and I posted some pictures online. And his surgery, multiple surgeries, are complete. So I am here to do the big reveal. Here he comes.
Bum, ba, ba, bum.
Oh my gosh.
He's gonna do his walk. He's gonna do his walk. Here he is. Look at him.
No more butthole.
Here he is. He's even worn a nice Halloween tie for the evening to reveal himself.
He's so beautiful.
He is completely fixed, and he is gonna. He's in Atlanta right now, and he's gonna find his way back up to Salem and back up to Courtney, back where he belongs soon enough. So thank you, Courtney, for trusting me with your Black Phillip.
Thank you for giving him his modesty back. I've heard he sent me some emails telling me how much he loves it at Auntie Heather's house. So
yes, he had a good adventure floating around with me as we journeyed through New England, and
with his diaper on.
He did wear a diaper. If you look at the pictures on my socials, you'll see he is wearing a diaper to maintain his modesty. And his heart grew 3 times too bigger, and I put a little heart inside of him. So he's going back with all the love and care. So thank you for sharing him with me. And my Black Phillip is having a big time having a friend.
Oh, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome. And they'll be here for the show. They're watching. So be on your best behavior, Courtney, because your Black Phillip is watching.
Well, he wants to, now that he has his modesty back, I don't know how he wants to behave.
He's not going to be able to be contained.
Watching. Rich asked if that was a pillow of me behind Ms. Courtney Buckley.
Sure is.
Is that a pillow of me, Ms. Courtney Buckley?
It's the only way I get to sleep with Richard Lale. That
is true. Otherwise, you have to have happiness is hard to find. So yes, that is a picture on a pillow of me. So if you would like them, you can go to our link, which is what is it called, Courtney? It's the
mysterycontrol.com.
Mystery.
There
Control.
it is. And use code Patty and save 25%.
That is correct. That is correct. That was a nice word from our sponsors.
Perfect.
And now we get into the crux of the deal. So we are going to begin with Late Night with the Devil, which is a 2023 film starring David. I always get his name incorrect. Delsmalchian. I think I've said that correctly. David may actually be watching in the audience, in your viewing audience, in your homes right there. David may actually be watching because we are all familiar with our friend of the channel, Chad Edward Lee Evatt, the amazing Chad Hatter. So I was introduced to David through Chad Hatter, and we invited David, but he was busy tonight, so he said he would probably be watching. So no pressure. I
love you. Okay.
With that, we begin on Halloween night 1977. It is the story about sort of found footage that the 2000s sort of overdid quite a lot, but it's Halloween night 1977, and Jack is this late night talk show host who, through a series of events, ended up at the Grove, which we know is a reference to the Bohemian Grove, which was founded in 1872, and it is where all members of the Illuminati and the rich and the powerful go to make plans, all of the devious plans that may happen in the following year. In this, Jack, he makes a deal, and he wants his show to be number one. He wants the show to be number one. He wants to be number one. He doesn't realize, however, that there is a price, and the price that he must pay is that his wife, dubbed Minnie, must die of lung cancer, though she has never once smoked a single cigarette in her life. And that is rare for 1977 because, face it, everybody smoked in 1977. Along the way, it is sort of along the lines of any sort of talk show host that you would find, from from Johnny Carson, whom the character Jack is always number 2. He's never number 1. He can never usurp to number 1. All the way through Jay Leno, through even more recent ones. I can't think of their names. Jimmy Kimmel, or you have that same sort of television monologue. You have the jokes, you have the guests, you have all of these amazing sort of television shows. But in order to boost his ratings, he has planned a very special Halloween episode where he brings on, first and foremost, a famous psychic medium who goes through the audience and says, "Oh, I feel the spirits." And I'm going to do a little bit of that right now. So right now, through the television, through the magic of television, right now, all of you audience members at home, I am sensing the letter N. There's a letter N. It's for Nate. Is it?
Oh,
Nate. Oh, you know a Nate.
I know one.
Oh, yes. Wait. Let me see. This Nate is he's very special to you. Yes, he is. Yes. Oh,
wow. Yes.
Okay, that's so amazing, isn't it? Nate. Ooh, wait. What is he saying? Come in, Nate. Come in, Nate. Oh, sorry. His spirit is gone. With that, he calls in this television psychic who may or may not be a charlatan. Because in the course of it, yes, he does that sort of audience trick where he...
What?
That is only...
Richard Will! What did you do?
I am telling you, we are summoning the spirits right now. We are summoning those spirits. God. So it should be noted that my pillow just kicked the bucket right over there. So it is, of course, Late Night with the Devil. But he calls in this psychic medium who, over the course of his sort of point on the show, actually connects with a woman named Minnie. And there's a man who is unmarried wearing a wedding band, and this person needs to connect. He needs to connect, and nobody answers. Of course, we find out that Jack's wife, the nickname was Minnie. And this connection to this spirit actually ends up by killing this man, and he goes on to the hospital. He's after vomitose projectile that is straight out of goodness. I mean, it's
The Exorcist.
It's very much The Exorcist. It's black goo that sort of goes everywhere. He's rushed to the emergency room and he dies along the way. But sort of as this goes back and forth between reality, what we see on television, and then what is behind scenes, it goes to black and white. And behind scenes, you know that there's a lot of chaos that's actually happening. And in that, he brings on a girl who escaped from a cult. The cult is sort of a mix of Jim Jones and the Church of Satan. It's founded by someone who is knockoff Anton Szandor LaVey. I can't remember his name at the moment. And he has convinced the caretaker. What is her name? Virginia? I'm drawing a blank at names. But he convinces the caretaker to conduct this sort of spirit session where they contact Mr. Wiggles, who is her name for this demonic entity. As luck has it, as they're in the confines of the show, they bring on a James Randi who's not James Randi. For those of you who don't know who James Randi is, James Randi was a Canadian who in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s was a skeptic. He was a stage magician, and he had offered $100,000 reward to prove if there was anything that was actually metaphysical. The amazing Randy, as our producer Rob says. So Randy, this knockoff Randy, sort of in this world of 1977, comes on and he hypnotizes the stage. He hypnotizes the camera crew. He hypnotizes them and says, now see, look, what we just experienced with this demon possession was nothing but trickery. It didn't really happen. None of it really happened. It's not real. But Jack, the host of the show, says, wait a minute, go back. There's a frame here. Go back. So they go back and they find that there is actually a spirit who is there, and then all hell breaks loose. As opposed to sort of saying, okay, you know what, let's contain this in a more safe environment. Let's make this a two-parter. Let's come back to this. No, they go to commercial break, they come back, and the show must go on. And they actually bring in this demon, Abraxas. Abraxas, of course, in the Gnostic Gospels was the god of all. And then he sort of became demonized as new religions come in. And his number is 365, and he deals with all of life and all of time. Abraxas is the god of time. And also it comes into abracadabra, nonetheless. This girl is possessed. And all of these people start seeing electricity shoot, and the lights are going out, and there's some death. There is a lot of death. It's not necessarily gory, but there is a demon that does come through the monitor, and it knocks pillows of the devil off of Courtney Buckley's background. So in all of this, in the end, we think that it's over. We think that it's been done. We think that it's finished. And yet we are left with, come back, come back, come back, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. And it is the voice of what would have been James Randi, the amazing Randi, trying to wake people up out of their hypnosis. And it leaves you wondering, what was real? Is it real? Did the devil actually attack? Did Jack actually end up by fulfilling his bargain and letting his wife die of lung cancer? Was it real or was it not? And that is where we open the floor. Ms. Heather Green, you have a little bit of a historical context to this film, I am certain.
Oh, I've got some 5 things to share. I'm going to get my notes because I can't remember things all that well. Let me just get my sheet here. Black Phillip, hang on. He's moving around.
Everybody's falling.
It's Abraxas. So first, my 5 things to know about this film. We're going to start with it being record breaking. So I'm going to take us out of the spooky and go into the numbers. It is record breaking. Number 2, we're going to talk about, that 70s set. And then number 3, I'm going to do a little context at that point. We'll talk about it being 1977 and what that means for the occult. And leading into number 5, I skipped one. Well, I'll get to that. You guys will find out. We'll get into whether it's allegory or whether it's not, which is something Richard Lale hinted at. So number 1, record breaking. So yes, this was originally an IFC film. It was released. It showed up at the South by Southwest Film Festival and then was released into theaters for just a month in the US, only about 1,000 theaters. And it made a record 2.8 million in its first showing. Now, 2.8 million, statistically, hey, what does that mean exactly? Well, the film only cost about $150,000. So they made a lot of money for this low budget film. Then it went just a month later, it started streaming on Shudder, and it broke records for Shudder and streaming as well. This film was a sensation in terms of it being financially speaking. And for the 2 directors who are Australian, this was, just so you know, this was filmed in Melbourne, in Australia. This is an Australian film. The directors, I think they're brothers, I believe, and they are Australian as well. And it does have an Australian feel the way it's done, which is really another story of what I mean by that, but it does have an Australian feel. Number 2, which I skipped, was it's a found footage film. So what does that mean exactly? It's made to look as if you're watching real footage. And another low budget trivia question, a low budget found footage film that broke the bank and broke records is anybody? It's celebrating its 25th anniversary, I believe.
The Blair Witch Project?
Blair Witch Project. You got it, Courtney. Let's spin that wheel. Win a car. And so, yeah, so we have another following in that footsteps of the Blair Witch Project. Of course, it's been all over social media because it is celebrating its anniversary. And that's fascinating. It's a little different, and that a little different than Blair Witch Project. And that leads me to the next one, that 70s set. So they made, I mean, I've noticed in the comments too, people are saying, I love the look, I love the old feel, I love the sets. They were very careful about this. They were staging this after the Dawn Lane show, which it was a show, which was a nighttime talk show in Australia. It was very popular. I've never seen it. It was an Australian show in the 70s and 80s. But what's even more important than the stylization of the sets and the way it looked was they actually used the cameras and the equipment and the lighting from that era. So instead of using modern technology to replicate the look, they actually went and one article was talking about the DP was talking about how they went and found dusted off old equipment that were in warehouses and hadn't been used for 30 years. So they were using pedestal cameras and all the things that they would have used on the sets in the 1970s to film these type of shows, they actually used, which gave the authentic look. Of course, adding black and white to it to differentiate between on camera and off was a neat little trick. Apparently, they did use some AI. I don't know exactly where. But they did admit to using some AI in places as well. So it wasn't all old technology, but they did nicely use that old tech to make that 70s feel. So that gets me to the next one, which is technically number 4, I guess, because I can't count any longer, it seems, which is the context. You know, I love I love context. I'm working, Richard Lale. 1977, and this is where we get into talking about Satanism. What is this movie about? It's about conjuring the devil. Now, this film uses a lot of 70s cues. We see a Rosemary's Baby cue. We see The Exorcist. We see the talk show. We see all these things from the 70s, but this is pre-Satanic Panic, and we love to bring the Satanic Panic up. This is not the Satanic Panic. Again, is mostly considered starting in 1983 when the court case began, but it didn't come out of nowhere. There was a precursor to it. So the 1970s provide that precursor. At the beginning of the movie, they talk about let's see, you see the interesting cults is shown in that montage at the beginning. You see we see the interest in cults, the interest in the occult. These things actually happen. This is part of the 70s. This is part of the late 60s into the 70s. This interest was growing. We know the witchcraft movement was born at this time, as well as Anton LaVey and all of this stuff. We talk about that all the time. But also we find the growth of the fundamentalist movement and evangelical movements. They were getting very strong by the late 70s during this period of time. So what we see is a precursor. This is showing a precursor to the Satanic Panic. And the one thing that I found very interesting, one of the cues that is in here, which some of you may not pick up on, is the girl and the psychologist. That is a nod to Michelle Remembers. It is one of the books that's credited as being a cause for the Satanic Panic. I mean, one thing can't be a cause for that type of war panic, but it was one big cause. And what it was there was a psychiatrist, I believe, and I'm trying to get his name. His name was, I think, was it Lane or Lance Padsder? I can't remember his name right at the moment. But he was a psychiatrist who interviewed this girl, Michelle, who was allegedly part of a cult and who was kept in a basement and who was part of this satanic cult and was beaten and abused and all that kind of stuff. She was then pulled out of it, and he used regression therapy to go ahead and get memories of being part of the cult out. So Pazdar, I'm sorry. Thank you, Richard Lale. That was Pazdar. Lance, I believe, or Lane, or something with an L. And he was
something with an L. Larry.
And so yeah, so the psychiatrist and the girl in this movie were very much a take on that relationship of Michelle remembers. And it's important because Michelle, the she mentions regression in the movie, and the regression that she talks about that this doctor used for real was eventually not patented, but used in all of the Satanic Panic investigations that then proceeded into the 80s and caused all the problems. There he goes. Michelle remembers. Lawrence, see, Larry, I was close. And he became a big figure in teaching and speaking about using these therapies to get the admissions that kids were being abused by Satanists. So it's a fantastically interesting, horrifying story. He was later discredited many years later. Yes, Ed and Lorraine Warren's name was also dropped as well. So this was set in the pre-Satanic Panic times, but yet what's interesting is that the 70s you would not have had a show on this topic. This was a show topic that would have appeared later in the 80s. The whole Geraldo Rivera, Oprah Winfrey, late 80s times is when you started to see this. So it's the topic is out of time, but it's really interesting that they're diving into these pre-Satanic 70s concepts and subject matter. So that was fascinating in and of itself. So now getting to, was it really about Satan? Was this an allegory? So the actor who may be watching David said in an interview that he felt that this was more about our guilt and the demons inside of us and the things that we struggle with personally. This was an allegory, which I found absolutely fascinating because that's what the director and author of Rosemary's Baby said about Rosemary's Baby. When the film came out, everybody took it for not an allegory, that it was actually about Satan. So the question is left up to us, and we can take that note and start talking. Was this an allegory or about our own struggles, where everyone's struggling with a demon inside of them? The girl, the psychiatrist, everybody is struggling. Or was this really about a demon being conjured? Was this literal? Which Rosemary's Baby is it? So I'll leave you there. Those are my 5 things, and we can start talking about it.
You mentioned, I would like to just briefly mention the AI that was used. There was an image, I don't remember exactly where it was, but there was an image that was used to render, and that became quite the controversy in this film, because AI, as we know, it steals artwork. We have taught it to create, and so it takes on these things from other artists, and it makes it its own sort of thing, but it steals from other artwork. And that is why artists were sort of angry and upset with the film. That said, I understand why it was done. I understand why it was used. It's quick. You're on a tight budget. And also sometimes in the AI, sometimes you might actually need it. In other films, it would take so long to color each frame if someone's eyes are changing. So AI has its place, even though I understand why on both sides. I think one of the AI spots may have been a backdrop to the door, but I'm not certain. I'm not sure. I don't really know exactly where it was either, but I did in my research find that the AI was a major thorn in the side of the movie. With that, Courtney, you haven't said yet.
My turn. Okay. So I would like everyone to remain calm as I say this. Okay. Everyone take a deep breath and sit. Make sure you're sitting. I know that I have said before how much I hate the 70s. I know all of these things. This movie is one of my top 5 all-time favorite movies. I saw it 3 times in a row in the theater, 3 nights in a row, because I could not stop going back to see it. Because as I'll talk about in a minute, it's worth rewatching because you notice things that you didn't see before. There's a lot to it. I would like to tell you guys the story of the first time that I went to see it at the movie theater. I was child free, and I took a page out of Patty's book, and had to take an Uber to the movie theater so that I was not responsible for driving. If we all
Thankfully,
technically drive.
because you would have been possessed.
Right. And in such a state, sitting down to watch this movie that I was not expecting, the first thing that happens is the all the production companies in the beginning. There were so many of them that people thought something was wrong, like with the movie, because it just kept going and going, and then people in the theater were like laughing. But then it sucks you into the TV. Like there's all these little things. It sucks you into the TV. The TV is staticky, and you see a demonic face in it, and then it starts talking about this behind the scenes thing. And I am a sucker for found footage. I love found footage. So this whole concept to me was already exciting. But this behind the scenes true Hollywood story type, like almost true crimey situation, I like hook, line, and sinker. You had me. But then the second the show started, right? Like you're watching the actual show, I was like, oh my God, I've time traveled. I am sitting on an orange shag rug in front of a mahogany oval shaped coffee table, kicking my feet. It is I'm currently in the 70s, and this is happening in front of my face. And as such, watching it in that way, I think it affected how I saw it every other time I watched it, because I've watched it probably half a dozen times now. But like I was so enthralled in the scene with Christoph, whatever his name is, where yeah, I was like feeling extreme secondhand embarrassment watching him like struggle, and then immediately suspicious, and I'll come back to this in a second, of the skeleton that was sitting there. And then but then I was like, so now I'm in my brain trying to figure out, oh, there's something with that skeleton. Okay, great. And then it moves over to the mother and daughter, and they're telling the story of, oh yeah, see, there's the skeleton. This part, so sus. What is that? We'll come back to it.
Oh, we're
But
coming back to that.
it goes over to the scene with the mother and the daughter and the son that committed suicide or whatever, and I was like crying, like it was real, and I believed every minute of this movie, even the weird, like cheesy 70s style electric shocks. I believed it all. I believed every second of it. And then the whole part with like his wife coming through and all that, I was just, I couldn't even believe it. So then when we get to the part where the they're trying to bring out the demon or whatever, and then she like turns her head and she's all possessed, I literally gripping the armrests of the chair because it's happening. Like I'm watching it. This is history. I can't live like this. Like I'm watching history unfold. And then the other guy comes on and hypnotizes this dude hypnotizes the announcer guy. There he is. And I was like, and then they're going back and they're talking about like who saw the worms. And I'm like, can I be hypnotized through a movie? Like, was I hypnotized? Because I saw the worms. Like, is this happening to me right now? And then in that headspace, I think that's what made the end of the movie not make me roll my eyes. Because if I had not been in that mindset right there where I was questioning whether or not I could be hypnotized through a movie, I feel like the end felt like the found footage piece of the end kind of fell apart. But where I was hypnotized. I believed I was hypnotized. So I was hypnotized right along with Jack throughout that whole end scene. And whenever it cut back to he stabbed his wife and the knife is in the girl, in Lily, I was like mind blown. And then at the end, I was like frozen in my seat, staring at the screen, and at the bottom of the screen in the corner it says end transmission, and then it goes staticky for a second and says so it is done, and then goes back to end transmission. So I literally walked out of the movie theater and immediately got on Reddit, and I've never done this in my life, but I did a deep dive on Reddit because I wanted to understand what other people understood, or see what other people saw in this movie, and the things that people found were insane. So going back to watch it again, the wife's reflection appears multiple times. She's in a mirror, she's in the crystal ball on the table. In the beginning, I think we have a picture of it, there's a Hollywood Reporter magazine or whatever, and at the bottom it says Hail Abraxas. And like I don't know if you can see it, Yeah, there it is at the bottom. UBC movie of the week, Hail Abraxas. I'm literally getting goosebumps right now just talking about this, like, because that to me feels like it set it up in such a way that, like, you not only do you question whether it's an allegory, but you question if it is demonic. This whole thing was set up from the get-go. And the other piece that I found, which I thought was really cool, and I'm gonna kind of get ahead of myself a little bit, it's a quote, but when you're watching through the movie in the first like the first time, in the beginning of the movie, they're talking about Jack's life, and he's like signing a contract or something, and the reporters are talking and they're asking him questions, and one person says, "What did you have to sacrifice to get here tonight?" And it's so just like blown over, like you don't. You're not if you're not paying attention, you almost don't hear it. But then it goes back to it at the end of the movie to like reiterate, oh well, this is what he did. Like wild, all of these little things. Um, I thought it was interesting that Lily wasn't hypnotized. There was a couple of people in the audience that weren't hypnotized, but Lily, who was possessed, supposedly was not hypnotized. And then the craziest part to me, and I didn't see this, I think, until the third rewatch, when they're going back and rewatching the footage, like that again, chills. I can't the way that they did that, but they're going back
frame by frame
by frame, and you see the terrible CGI ghost behind him. And then it cuts, look at this. It cuts to him now, he's in studio, and that's his wife's hand on his shoulder. And it's so subtle that I missed it the first two times I watched it. Like, so that it just goes to like it's someone said it's a mind F, and that's exactly what it is, because there's so many little details that make you question what is actually happening. It's like the best unreliable narrator situation, and I loved every single second of this movie. As soon as I left the theater, I think I texted Rob, our producer, and was like, we have to talk about this movie. Like, I don't even know what I watched, but we have to talk about it because it's so great, and there's just so much to talk about.
I think that the questioning you're having is similar to what you see with the Blair Witch Project. It is questioning, and that's the point of a lot of the found footage when it's done with purpose. It's really about what, and one of the fascinating things about studying film really is what is real and what is not real, and what am I seeing and what's being created for the film, but what's real. And you can't see outside the camera when you're just getting found footage. You don't know what's going on outside the camera. You don't know what perspective you're getting. And there's a lot of questioning. So I think that's similar to what happens with the Blair Witch Project. This one happens with a still camera on a pedestal rather than a handy cam going like this the whole time.
Right.
But it's the same thing. What actually did happen? And
right.
You're left without an answer.
I wanted to talk briefly about the skeleton.
Please.
So, first and foremost, I have been on a diet lately because I want, when I die, I want my epitaph to read, "Here lies Richard Lale, still just as thin." I digress. I do believe that the skeleton is incredibly important, not just for the film, but also for the storytelling, for the narrative. Yes, it can very well be death. Yes, it can be the devil. But if you go all the way back 100 years in cinematography, Lon Chaney in The Phantom of the Opera, and then you go back 130 years to the original writing of The Phantom of the Opera, the Phantom, in disguise, descends the grand staircase as the Mask of the Red Death. He has the skull face and he's in red. You might notice that in this scene, there's a man in red who has the devil horns. Who is sitting right next to the skeleton figure. The skeleton figure never moves. The skeleton figure never says anything. It is that sort of looming presence. It is the warning that is to come. It says you make a pact and you have to be careful what you ask for.
It's Faustian. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, I think it's magic, but go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's a Faustian pact.
That is the Phantom in The Phantom of the Opera as the Mask of the Red Death. There's as you see here, it's a It's a play on that.
I feel like this is one movie where because I feel like horror movies it wasn't particularly scary. I wasn't really scared, but like it was a movie where the ending for me wasn't ruined. The monster, like she was so badass when she became like the whatever television demon electronic thing that she was. I was obsessed with her. But I like the monster didn't ruin it. The ending didn't ruin it. I believed every minute. I held my breath for most of the movie. And I just watched it again tonight, and I've seen it a bazillion times. I watched it again tonight. Same thing. I got goosebumps the whole time. I teared up. I held my breath. I was like so engrossed in it, and I forget. Like I know I love it, but I forget how much I love it until I'm watching it again, or I'm showing it to someone else, or I'm trying to explain it to someone. It's a movie that everybody should see, and you should watch it more than once.
Mm-hmm.
And Heather, to your point, it is a Faustian bargain. I think that is where we go into magic as well, because when I teach magic, I tell people be very careful what you ask for, because every piece of magic comes with a cost. Everything that you create, everything that you ask for, everything that you are working towards comes at a cost. And that's why you have to be specific. Go ahead.
Yeah, and that whether this was actually a literal demon, or this was something in his mind that that created by the pacts that he made with this group, this secret group, and these wealthy people, and he sold his soul for, not literally sold his soul, but sold it to this wealthy benefactors who then create, and whatever the case, whatever pact he made a Faustian pact, whether it was with humans or whether it actually was with a devil or a demon. So that's fascinating. I thought it was brilliantly done. I think if you get sold on the literal demon part, the ending has a little bit of a problem because you don't know where it's going. If you can accept the fact that it may be and it may not be, the ending's confusion is you can deal with the ending. Like at first I couldn't deal with the ending. I was like, well, this was been brilliant and now I don't know what's happening. And then when you sit with it for a minute and go, that's the point. And what actually did happen, and you have to live with that, again, like the Blair Witch Project. And I think it was I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I thought it was, for a low budget film, it was brilliant. The concepts were brilliant. So I was entranced the whole time. I was on my edge. I jumped at one point. I had a jump scare. That was awesome. I love that. And it was creepy. It had the creep factor. So, and the skeleton for me, I think also was symbolic. He didn't turn out to be, I thought he was going to turn out to be something. I thought there was going to be more of a role, but he's very symbolic. He was in symbolic. If you think about this as guilt and our rawness and him being stripped bare of all of his showmanship to what he is living with, the skeleton is that's what we have, our bones. Or is he the precursor or the forebearer of what's going to happen to him, whether he's going to die or whether he's going to meet a dead person, whatever. So that he was very symbolic, sitting there and not talking. Definitely creepy.
I'm curious what you think, speaking of creepy, of Lily, how that she the entire time is staring directly into the camera like she's staring into your soul. And the fact that she, through this demon, Abraxas, knows Jack. What is your take on this?
Well, she also knew exactly what camera to look in. So every time the camera changed, she would look right at the camera that was on. And I loved her. I thought she was so deliciously creepy the whole time. And she had that like sweet innocence about her. Like, we just want people to know the truth. And, everything's fine. Oh my God. And, oh, June says that you're really handsome or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, and it's that same thing for me, that like you question whether or not it was happening the whole time. Mm-hmm. And like you just didn't see it.
She pulls from the 70s, and that's what I was doing. She pulls from the 70s freaky kid horror genre, whether, like I said, it's like the red rum, little guy, The Shining, The Exorcist. She is wrapped up in all of that. They know their horror movies from the 70s. They know the 70s genre. So and they were just boiling down on that. Yes, she probably knows everybody's social security
Yeah.
number.
I wanted to say too, one thing that I did on a rewatch was the end. Because I had the same problem where I was like, I wanted to understand anything, any part of the end I wanted to understand. And so I could get on board once I finally got on board with like, or I got on board with the hypnotizing, whatever. But then when it cuts to him and he's stabbing Lily, and then it widens, the shot widens, and there's all the bodies everywhere. On a rewatch, I went back and paid attention to make sure that like the one guy was lit on fire, the one guy's head was turned around, the other one's throat was cut, and that was all. They were all dead the same way that they were in whatever was happening. So then I was like, wait a minute. How can that be? Because he couldn't have lit somebody on fire from the inside and turned somebody's head all the way around and cut somebody's throat with a necklace. Or could he? I don't know. But like, I just thought that was neat that like that it's so confusing.
I would like to see a stage play of this. I think this would be a brilliant stage play, honestly.
Would be a good
well,
one.
Alicia said, and I agree with her, that she wished. I want to know if there's a director's cut of this or an extended version, and I would like to see if it clarifies or confuses anything. After having watched Midsummer director's cut, oh my god, the money I would pay to see a director's cut of this.
I have a legitimate question to ask of you, you, my lovely panel, my lovely friends. The serious question that I have is, if Abraxas or the devil or Satan or whatever power may be is so incredibly powerful, and Jack has signed this Faustian pact with the devil, whether it be human or otherwise, if they're so powerful, why is he number two? Why not go on to Johnny Carson? Why not go on to some other show? Why number two? And then for it to be buried and lost for 50 years.
I bought it. I bought into the Faustian pact being with the demon. Sorry, I didn't buy it with. So that's that. I don't think it had anything to do with that. And why didn't he become? I mean, maybe the other one made a better pact.
But also too, I don't think he would have worked. I don't think he would have worked as hard if he immediately got number one. He was willing to do whatever it took to get number one, and that was because of being at number two for so long. So he continued to let all these things happen in this grand finale. And I think at some point in the show they said Abraxas was like loved the stage, like wanted to be a production. So I think that this was the production. So Abraxas wanted this to be the thing. So you would have to get him to be in the mindset of doing whatever it took to get to number one in order to make this happen.
I have also sort of on the satanic panic and demons coming through the television, through the interwebs at you. We didn't have the interwebs back in the 80s, but I remember 1983. I grew up, as you know, I've said so many times, Pentecostal, and there was a fellow who claimed to be a high priest at the Church of Satan, and for the life of me, I cannot remember the charlatan's name. He was not, by the way, and he said that if you listen to Queen backwards, Freddie Mercury sings, "I love to smoke marijuana." Freddie didn't love to smoke marijuana. That I know to be true. But I loved the Smurfs and I loved He-Man for obvious reasons. Anyway, I was not permitted to watch them because the demons would come through the screen.
The Smurfs and Cabbage Patch Kid and D&D and oh gosh, the number of things that were considered to be demonic or possessed by the demons or could turn you. There was it was a real fear. There was some, and I had a quote. There was some woman. There was some report of the number of people who reported to the LA police in a month of having neighbors that were demonically possessed, and it was insane number. It was like in the thousands, I think, or it was a huge number. I don't remember it. I actually wrote an article about this, and that number is in the article. It's been too long for me to remember. I mean, it was becoming insane. In many cases, that and by 83, 85, it was literally insane. And I have a whole chapter in my book on the Satanic Panic, because of course the movies of the 80s and late 80s all reflect that. They were terrified. And this was just the beginning.
It
This was right before it.
it lasted though
10
for
years.
years, 10
15.
years for that. And then
15.
people still held on to it. I remember, I'm going to tell a story about when I lived in Hollywood. When I first moved to Los Angeles, I lived on Santa Monica and Van Ness, right directly across from the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. And it was this charming little studio above a prop house. My neighbor was a hoarder, a hoarder, a hoarder, a hoarder, a hoarder. And I shared a wall with him. So I happened to be coming and going, and I noticed that he was digging in the big bin outside of the building. And I said, "Sir, you've got to stop this, because we share a wall, and I don't want dirty things. I don't want disease. I don't want infestations." And he says, "No, this is money." I said, No. This is styrofoam. Styrofoam. You literally can't do anything about it. You can't. It's really bad for the environment, but it's bad. And he says, "I don't care. It's money." And I said a few expletives, which I cannot say here. I said a few expletives. And he said, "Don't say those words. I'm a Christian." And I said, "I don't care," expletive, "because I'm a Satanist. Stop digging in the garbage." So in a not so pleasant aspect of this, my neighbor was murdered by his disgruntled girlfriend, shot in the face on the 4th of July. And when I came home a week later, it's Miss Patty Negri.
Hey!
Negri.
Hi.
We'll come back to that story later. Come on in, Patty.
No, finish your
Hi.
story. Finish your story. I just came in to pop in and say hi. I've been fighting with the internet, stuck at the airport. Your usual travel, but I had to say hi to you guys.
We
Well,
miss you.
I
we
miss
do
you
miss you.
too. I
We
miss you.
absolutely. You look beautiful. Where
I can't imagine. Thank you.
can you tell us where you are, Patty Negri?
I'm in a secret location very close to Jason Mankey.
Mm,
Very close. I
Oh.
don't have any idea of where I have to be or when quite yet. So I don't know if I'm going to have free time to get to see him, but my fingers are crossed because
Mhm.
I think I'm like 10 miles from him.
That's
wow.
awesome.
You should
Yes.
definitely see him.
I know.
Mhm.
If we can, we will. Hi, everybody. This is so cool. So finish your story, Richard Lale.
I
Please
was
finish your
saying,
story.
so about 4th of July, and then my neighbor was murdered by his disgruntled girlfriend. And I come home a week later, and mind you, I've been noticed. I actually saw the dead guy. I saw him in my apartment. He was standing by my closet, and I walked in, and I was like, "Okay, all right, that's crazy. I don't know why I'm saying that, but okay." And then a week later, I come home. I had been out. I come home. There's cops everywhere, and the cops have said they say, "What's your name? What are you doing here?" And I said, "I live in number 7 or whatever." And they said, "Okay, come on up here. Don't step in the blood," as I'm stepping over this bloody scene. And we get into my apartment, and he says, "Where were you on the 4th of July?" I said, "Oh, I was out." He said, "Well, how well did you know him?" And I went, I'd see him in the hallway once in a while, but it's not like we were friends. And he says, "So I shouldn't ask this, but are you a Satanist?" And I went, "Well, I identify as one." But he says, "Well, the neighbor next door said that you're a Satanist and that you have gay orgies." And
Of course you do.
You murderous gay orgy haver.
Well, he said, and he said that you had a beef with this guy and that you were to blame. And I said, "Listen, gay orgies aside, Satanism aside, and by the way, I was at my walls were this color pink, by the way." And I said, aside from that, of all of the people in this apartment complex, the guy that I spoke to once in a while when I would take out the rubbish or check my mail was not the first person I would shoot, because it would be someone else. It would be someone else, if you get my drift. So he would continually call the cops on me and say that I was a murderer. And then so I got it in my head. I said, fine, if you're going to think that of me, every time I would see this neighbor in the hallway, I would do this sort of thing. I would go,
This is my favorite story that you've ever told.
This is a good one.
and so he'd go, oh, oh. And I admit I was being vindictive, but I thought, well, sometimes you have to give them the devil they desire. With that, we should go to Courtney about maybe you have some quotes for us.
I do have some quotes. Okay, so my first one is, what did you have to sacrifice to get here tonight? Which I already talked about. And then when he was in the crowd while Christo was reading, and he's talking to the skeleton, and he was making fun of him, and he said, "Don't be upset. I'm just ribbing you," which I thought was humorous. So I wrote it down. Then after Christo, well, I don't know how you say his name, was done, and he was like panting and coughing in the chair, and the producer guy was like, "Mr. Christo, looks like you might need a bourbon." And he was like, "Just some water, please." And then the producer guy goes, "In this place?" I thought that was funny. And then the producer guy's talking to Jack, and he says, he was telling them like the big wig executives were in the front row, and he's like, "Don't look at them, like whatever, but they're sitting right over there." And Jackie's like, and then the producer goes, "You're looking right at them. I don't understand that." I thought that was funny. And then Jack says, bats in the cave, because he wants to know if he has boogers, and I say that constantly, so I was very excited about that. And then of course the Ed and Lorraine name drop. The skeptic guy said, "My dear friends, Ed and Lorraine," he was talking about being at the Amityville Horror House. "My dear friends, Ed and Lorraine Warren declined to join me. Easily spooked." And I thought that was pretty funny. And he also said, "You no more have the power of divination than I resemble Burt Reynolds." And then one of like the stage managers was walking past in the back at one point, and he was like, "Staging, where's my sacrificial dagger? We're on in 60 seconds. And I thought that felt like something very Witches Movie Coven coded that needed to and then something that spoke to my heart was they had all those different artifacts on the tray, including a skull. And they said, "We have some pieces here from your private collection. Girls gotta have a hobby." And I was like, "Oh, that's funny. That's humorous." Also, Jack is being all serious, and he's like, "Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for a live television first as we attempt to commune with the devil, but not before a word from our sponsors."
He did that several times. It was great.
Yeah. I liked the way that they would call them back from hypnosis by saying, "Dreamer, here, awake." And then lastly, the best line in the entire movie was when she becomes like the electronic demon, and she's like zapping everybody, and then the skeptic immediately falls to his knees and is begging to join forces with the devil, and then very shakily pulls out the check and holds it up to the demon, and the demon goes, "Abracadabra," and then kills him. I was like, yes!
You're waiting for that one.
Oh my god, it was the most satisfying thing I've ever seen in my life. And then not really a quote, but I thought it was cool, and I already talked about it. The words on the screen at the end when it flashed from end transmission to "so it is done." And so it is done.
The one quote that they said, and what does he say? "What you're about to see here is very much all." I just got Twilight Zone vibes from that, because you got that Outer Limits Twilight Zone 50s vibe from that thing. It was very, very horror-esque.
Oh, it's so good.
I am told that from the great beyond, we may be able to contact Jason Mankey to Jason Mankey. Let's summon the energies and summon the spirits, and maybe we can call forth his Mankey movie minute. Let's see if we can do it.
Not here live on the show tonight. However, I love you all so much that I recorded a little Mankey movie moment for all of you. We really can't call them a minute anymore because I always go way over my allotted minute. But here you go. Never doubt my love for all of you who are a part of our delightful coven. Visit a world before the internet. A world where people under the age of 75 actually called into television stations to voice their happiness or displeasure. A world where late-night talk shows were apparently really important and people smoked cigarettes indoors. Yuck! Do I really have to go and visit this world? Late Night with the Devil somehow isn't about Jimmy Fallon or the return of Jay Leno. It's about a talk show host named Jack Delroy who has spent too many days and nights among the redwood trees. And that's not a euphemism. Like most super successful white dudes, Jack is part of a secret cult that's coincidentally located only 3 hours from my house. Maybe I'm actually there tonight removing Courtney's weekly exes and not at a Hootie and the Blowfish concert. Jack has been a very naughty boy, and it's time for him to be freaked out by a possessed 12-year-old. Exactly the kind of person who is always possessed in these types of movies. Starring that one guy you've seen in a lot of different things is Jack. You know the guy. He's got a really long filmography and a really long last name, and was in The Dark Knight, the super awesome Batman movie, and then was apparently the arch nemesis of MacGyver on TV because they remade MacGyver, which I only know because I can read Wikipedia. He also played the guy who says Baba Yaga in the Ant-Man movies, which might be the best thing about the Ant-Man movies. You remember that? He was like Baba Yaga. So yes, that guy. He's been in lots of stuff. Watch that one guy you sort of know star beside a bunch of mostly unknown Australian actors, but actors who are just famous enough to have a Wikipedia page somehow, even though Patti Negri doesn't have a Wikipedia page and is more famous than those people. Drink every time one of those performers says something and their Australian accents slip through. And finally, indulge in some super awesome found footage horror that diverges completely from found footage horror at the end of the movie. Find yourself in a psychedelic murderscape that's surreal and trippy and takes you out of the world the other 80 minutes of this film so epically created. Dun dun dun.
Bravo, Jason. Bravo. Patty, you're looking a little possessed there. Are you?
Oh no! Ah! Abraxas! Hail Abraxas!
You know, I know we're running short on time, but I actually wanted to say, Courtney, and I'm not. This is not the show. This is since you've been sitting here, I have been seeing little lines that'll flash across behind your left shoulder, and there is. I think there is someone who is there with you. I'm not. This is.
Well, there is a bug in here, and it keeps flying into my face.
Oh, Patti Negri, is that you? Come in, come in, come in, come in. Is this Patti Negri coming in from the other side?
Nope.
That would be a no.
Well, I guess with that, we should go ahead and vote. I am going to vote with my dagger, my sacrificial dagger. And we are going up, 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 up. All of us are up.
Oh, it's unanimous.
It is
As
unanimous.
it should be. I would have. Oh, if
But you know
Jason
what?
was here and he voted down, I would have shown up.
I was just about to say that Mr. Jason Mankey is not here. He's only here in spirit. So we don't know how he was voting. And Miss Patti Negri was here for just a moment, but we don't know how she would vote either. But we're all up. So I guess while I was going to try to see if maybe we had Miss Patti Negri back, but we have already gone over like 5 minutes. So I guess
And this movie deserves it.
This
Frankly.
movie does deserve it. So with that, there is one more thing that witches do, and we, of course, cackle. Here we go, cackling away.